The desert was silent except for the wind that swept across the cracked ground. The air carried the scent of smoke from far-off battles, and the horizon was lined with the shadows of broken machines. Captain Daniel Reeve stood alone, his boots sinking slightly into the dusty earth, scanning the ruins of what had been an alien fortress. The war was over in this sector, at least for now, but the battlefield still whispered with the memory of screams. He had come here for a report, nothing more. But what he found instead would change everything. 2 alien women knelt before him, chained at the wrists, their heads bowed but their posture defiant. They were not like the enemy soldiers he had seen before. The first had skin the color of deep forest green, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders like strands of moonlight. Her golden eyes flicked up toward him for only a second, but in that brief glance, he saw a fire that no chains could dim. The second had smooth blue-gray skin with long black hair that tumbled over her face, partly hiding her sharp, beautiful features. Her eyes were cold, but they watched him carefully, as if weighing his every move. Daniel had seen enough of war to know that beauty and danger often walked hand in hand. These were no ordinary prisoners. Their clothing was torn, their bodies marked with dirt and faint bruises, but their presence radiated strength. The guards who had captured them stood off to the side, their weapons at ease, but their eyes flicked toward him with something between curiosity and respect. The commander of the outpost stepped forward, his voice low but direct. "By order of the High Council, Captain, you may take one of them as your reward for victory. They are high-value captives. Choose wisely." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Daniel's eyes moved from one woman to the other. The green-skinned one met his gaze now without hesitation, her jaw tightening as if daring him to choose her. The blue-gray one kept her eyes lowered, but her hands clenched, the chains between them rattling softly in the wind. They were enemies, yes, but not in the way he had been taught to think. Something in their posture, in the way they bore themselves, told him they were more than trophies of war. He thought of the battles he had fought, the orders he had followed without question. How many lives had been taken simply because 2 worlds refused to understand each other? He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "Choose one," the council said. "Leave the other behind. It should have been easy. Take the one who might be most useful, most valuable to the human cause." But when he looked at them, Daniel saw no prisoners, he saw survivors. The guards shifted impatiently, waiting for his decision. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across the kneeling women. The chains gleamed dully in the dusty light. "What happens to the one I don't choose?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying only to the commander. The answer was simple and without hesitation. "She will be sold to the highest bidder, or executed if she is deemed too dangerous." The words cut through him like a blade. He didn't flinch, but inside something hardened. The blue-gray one finally looked up at him then. Her eyes were sharp, like shards of dark glass, and for the first time he saw the fear beneath her controlled expression. The green-skinned one's gaze did not waver. She almost seemed to be bracing herself for the choice he would make. Daniel knew then that he could not walk away with only one. War had taken too much already. He would not let it take this. He straightened, his voice clear and steady. "I'll take them both," he said. The commander blinked, then laughed as if he had misheard. "Captain, the council's orders were to choose one, not both." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then tell the council I disobeyed." The words carried a weight that silenced the guards. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the commander gave a signal, and the chains binding the women's wrists were released. They didn't stand yet, they only looked at him with something between shock and disbelief. The war might have given him a choice between beauty and survival. But Daniel Reeve had chosen something else entirely. He had chosen defiance. And in that moment, He knew this decision would set in motion events far bigger than anyone in that desert could imagine. Asterisk. The green-skinned woman's chains clinked softly as she rose to her feet, moving with a slow, deliberate grace. Her silver hair caught the pale light of the overcast sky, and her golden eyes stayed locked on Daniel. The blue-gray one stood as well, a little unsteady, her legs stiff from kneeling for so long. She glanced at him once, then away again, as if unsure whether to trust him. The guards watched in silence, their weapons lowered, but their attention sharp. None of them understood why he had done this. Truthfully, he wasn't sure either, only that leaving one behind would have been a betrayal he couldn't live with. Daniel motioned for them to follow, and the women obeyed, though neither spoke. Their movements were cautious, measured. He could feel the weight of their eyes on his back as they walked across the open ground toward the waiting transport. The wind tugged at his jacket, carrying with it the low rumble of distant thunder. The war had left scars on this land-burnt patches of earth, shattered stone, and the remains of broken weapons half buried in the sand. The women saw it all as they passed, and though they said nothing, he could see their reactions in the tightening of their jaws and the set of their shoulders. Inside the transport, the hum of the engines filled the silence. Daniel sat across from them, studying their faces. They avoided his gaze at first, but the green-skinned one finally spoke. Her voice was smooth but edged with steel. "Why did you take both of us? Humans are not known for mercy toward our kind." Her words carried suspicion, but also curiosity. Daniel didn't answer right away. He leaned back, letting the question hang in the air. "Because I've seen enough death," he said finally. "I don't need to add yours to it." The blue-gray woman shifted slightly, her eyes narrowing. "You risked your rank for strangers," she said quietly. "No one does that without a reason." Daniel gave a small shrug. "Maybe I don't care much for rules," he replied. But he knew that wasn't the whole truth. There was something about them, something in the way they carried themselves, despite their chains, that told him they were more than prisoners of war. He would find out what it was, but not here, not yet. The transport rumbled on, carrying them away from the ruined fortress and toward the human base. Outside the narrow windows, the landscape blurred into a sweep of brown and gray, the occasional jagged rock breaking the monotony. The women sat side by side, but there was a tension between them. They did not look at each other, and Daniel wondered if they were allies at all. They might have come from the same empire, but in war, even allies had their own secrets. When they reached the base, the air was thick with the scent of fuel and metal. Human soldiers moved about in organized lines, their eyes widening as they caught sight of the alien women. Whispers followed them as Daniel led the two captives inside. He could hear fragments, "Why both?" And "He's out of his mind," but he ignored them. In the command hall, Colonel Hayes waited, his arms folded, his expression unreadable. "Captain Reeve," he said slowly, "I heard you made an unusual choice." Daniel stood straight, meeting the older man's gaze. "I brought them both back. They're my responsibility now." Hayes studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "You know the council will want an explanation, and they'll expect you to keep them under control." Daniel didn't look away. "I can handle that." Hayes gave a faint skeptical smile. "We'll see." Then he turned his attention to the women. "You'll be housed under guard. Cause trouble, and it ends badly for you." The green-skinned one met his gaze without flinching. The blue-gray one said nothing, but her eyes were sharp. Later, in the quarters assigned to them, Daniel brought them food, simple rations, but better than whatever they had been given before. They ate cautiously, watching him as much as they meal. "If you wanted to help us," the green-skinned one said at last, "then understand this, we are not prizes to be claimed." Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Then tell me what you are," he said. She hesitated, glancing at the other woman before answering. We are warriors. And we were on a mission before we were captured. The blue-gray woman finally spoke again, her voice low but firm. If you keep us here, you'll be drawn into a fight you don't understand. Daniel gave a faint smile. Too late for that, he said. I think I was already drawn in the moment I saw you both. They exchanged a look quick, but full of meaning, and Daniel knew they were hiding something important. He didn't push further, but in his gut, he felt the truth. Keeping them both had not just broken council orders. It had put him in the middle of something far larger than a single battle. The next morning, the base was buzzing with activity. Supply trucks rumbled in and out, soldiers hurried through the corridors, and a distant hum of aircraft filled the air. Daniel walked toward the secure wing where the alien women were kept. 2 guards stood outside the reinforced door, their postures stiff as he approached. They didn't question his presence, his authority was clear, but he could sense their unease. The news of his decision to take both captives had spread, and the whispers had grown louder overnight. Inside, the green-skinned woman was sitting, cross-legged on the floor, her silver hair falling over one shoulder as she examined the food tray from breakfast. The blue-gray one stood by the narrow window, staring out at the training grounds where human soldiers drilled in the dust. Neither looked surprised to see him. You came back, the green-skinned one said calmly. Daniel nodded. We need to talk. She tilted her head slightly. About what? You made your choice. Now we are yours, at least until your leaders decide otherwise. Her words were measured, but they carried a quiet challenge. Daniel ignored the bait. I want to know what mission you were on before you were captured. The blue-gray woman finally turned from the window, her eyes sharp. If we tell you, you'll be in danger. More than you already are. Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. I'm already in danger for keeping you both alive. So tell me. The green-skinned woman studied him for a long moment before speaking. We were sent to stop a weapon. A human weapon, built from stolen alien technology. If it is completed, it will destroy not only my people, but your world as well. The words hit him like a punch. Daniel's first instinct was disbelief, but their faces told him they believed it to be true. You're saying my people are building something that could wipe out entire planets? He asked. The blue-gray woman nodded once. And it is closer to completion than you think. Daniel's mind raced. If what they said was true, it meant someone high in the human command was hiding dangerous secrets. And if these women had been captured trying to stop it, their presence here was far from a coincidence. Why should I believe you? He asked. The green-skinned woman's golden eyes locked on his. Because the weapon will not care who it destroys. You saved us yesterday. We are telling you now so you have a chance to save yourself and your world. Before he could respond, the door behind him opened. Colonel Hayes stepped in, his expression unreadable. Captain Reeve, you're needed in the strategy room, he said. His eyes flicked to the women, then back to Daniel. Bring them. It wasn't a request. The walk to the strategy room was tense. The women followed quietly, their chains now replaced by lighter restraints. But Daniel could feel the eyes of every soldier they passed. The strategy room itself was filled with high-ranking officers, maps, and glowing holograms of troop movements. At the center of the table was an image that froze Daniel in place, a massive structure, being built on a distant asteroid. Hayes gestured toward it. Reconnaissance found this in neutral space. Enemy design but human-built. We're calling it Project Epsilon. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What's it for? The general in charge answered without hesitation. It's a deterrent, something to keep the alien coalitions in line. The green-skinned woman stepped forward despite her restraints. It's not a deterrent. It's a planet killer. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Several officers turned on her instantly, their hands going to their weapons. Hayes raised a hand to keep them still. And what makes you so sure? The blue-gray woman's voice was low but clear. Because our people built the first one. And it destroyed everything it touched. Silence filled the room. Daniel could see the tension building in the faces of the officers. Some looked skeptical, others uneasy. Finally, the general dismissed them all except Hayes, Daniel, and the 2 women. If this is true, the general said slowly, then we may have made a mistake. After the meeting, Hayes pulled Daniel aside. You brought them here. Now you're responsible for whatever comes next. If they're lying, you'll answer for it. If they're telling the truth, then you've just dragged us into a war we didn't plan for. His voice was cold, but Daniel could see the worry in his eyes. As they walked back toward the holding area, Daniel felt the weight of the decision he had made. Saving both women had already changed his life, but now it might change the fate of entire worlds. That night, Daniel visited their quarters again. If what you're saying is true, then I need proof, he told them. The green-skinned woman nodded slowly. We can get it, but it means leaving this base. And it means you'll have to trust us. The blue-gray one added, and once we leave, there will be no going back. Your people will call you a traitor. Daniel didn't hesitate. Then, I guess I'll have to be a traitor to save them. The women exchanged another look, and for the first time, there was no distance between them. They were united now, and Daniel knew whatever path they were about to take, it would be one they walked together. Asterisk, the plan came together in silence. Daniel waited until the dead hours of the night, when the base was at its quietest and the guards were most tired. He entered the secure wing with a clipboard in hand, pretending to carry out a routine check. The guards at the door didn't suspect much. He outranked them. Inside, the 2 alien women were already standing, as if they had been waiting for him. The green-skinned one's golden eyes shone faintly in the dim light. The blue-gray one gave a small nod, her black hair falling across her face. They didn't waste words. Daniel handed them plain combat jackets to cover their distinctive features and unlock the restraints. We walk out, he said quietly. No running, no sudden moves. The less attention we draw, the better. The green-skinned woman smiled faintly, as if amused by his calmness. You've done this before, she whispered. Daniel didn't answer, only pushed open the door and led them into the hallway. They moved quickly but without haste, keeping to the shadows along the outer corridors. The hum of machinery filled the air, and the faint smell of oil and fuel clung to the walls. Daniel's pulse was steady, but he was aware of every step they took, every soldier they passed. When they reached the vehicle bay, 2 guards were stationed at the entrance. Daniel walked ahead, greeting them casually. Transfer orders, he said, holding out forged papers. The guards glanced at them, then at the women, but didn't ask questions. One pressed the release button, and the gate slid open with a heavy metallic groan. They climbed into a small armored transport. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, the green-skinned woman beside him, the blue-gray one in the back. The engines hummed to life, and they rolled out into the cold night air. The base lights faded behind them as they drove into the open desert. The stars above stretched endlessly, and the land ahead was nothing but darkness and shifting sand. For the first hour, no one spoke. Finally, the blue-gray woman broke the silence. There's a relay station 40 kilometers from here. If we can reach it, I can send a signal to our allies. They have the proof you need about the weapon. Daniel kept his eyes on the horizon. And will your allies trust a human? She didn't hesitate. They'll trust anyone who helps us stop the weapon. The green-skinned woman shifted in her seat, watching him. You're risking everything for us. Why? Daniel kept his hands steady on the controls. Because you're right, if that weapon is real, it's not just your people who are in danger. And because I've seen what happens when leaders think power is more important than lives. The desert stretched on endlessly until the first Glow of the relay station appeared on the horizon. It was small, just a squat metal structure surrounded by antenna towers, but its signal reach would be enough. Daniel slowed the transport and pulled it behind a low ridge to stay hidden. They continued on foot, keeping low. The wind had picked up, carrying sharp grains of sand that stung their faces. When they reached the station, Daniel checked the door locked. But old, he bypassed it with a small tool from his belt, and they slipped inside. The interior was dim, filled with the hum of outdated equipment. The blue-gray woman moved to the console immediately, her fingers flying over the alien-coded keys. "I'm patching through now," she said. The green-skinned one stood guard at the window, her eyes scanning the empty desert. A voice crackled over the speakers in a language Daniel didn't understand, but the relief on the women's faces told him it was someone they trusted. "They're sending the proof," the blue-gray woman said. "It'll take a few minutes." Daniel nodded, moving toward the door to keep watch. That's when he saw the faint beam of lights in the distance headlights, moving fast. "Company," he said sharply. The green-skinned woman glanced outside, her eyes narrowing. "Your soldiers?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "They must have noticed we were gone." The blue-gray woman didn't stop typing. "I need 2 more minutes." Daniel took position at the door, his hand on his sidearm. The vehicles grew closer, the engines now a distant roar. The green-skinned woman moved beside him, pulling a small blade from her boot. "If they come through that door, I'll keep them busy," she said. Daniel gave her a look. "We're getting out together. No sacrifices." She didn't argue, but her grip on the blade didn't loosen. The first vehicle skidded to a stop. Outside, and boots hit the ground. A voice shouted orders. Daniel could hear the metallic clicks of rifles being readied. "1 more minute," the blue-gray woman called out. The door rattled as someone tried to force it open. Daniel raised his weapon. Then the console beeped, and the blue-gray woman ripped a small drive from the slot. "Got it," she said. Daniel didn't wait. "Move." They slipped out the back. Exit, racing into the night. The soldiers shouted behind them, but the darkness and the shifting sand gave them cover. The sound of gunfire cracked through the air, bullets sparking off metal as they ran toward the ridge where the transport was hidden. They dove inside, Daniel starting the engine without a word. The green-skinned woman glanced back at the chasing. "Lights. They won't stop now," she said. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he floored the accelerator. "Neither will we." The desert swallowed them again, but this time they carried something far more dangerous than chains. Asterisk. The transport's engines roared against the endless stretch of desert. The headlights cut through the night, but Daniel knew they couldn't outrun the pursuit forever. Every few minutes, he glanced at the rear-view screen. The chasing lights were still there, distant but steady. The green-skinned woman kept her gaze on the horizon ahead, scanning for landmarks. The blue-gray one clutched the small data drive tightly in her hands, as if afraid it would vanish. "We need somewhere to hide," Daniel said. "Someplace they can't track us." The green-skinned woman spoke without turning her head. "There's a canyon ahead with tunnels carved from ancient lava flows. We can lose them there." Daniel nodded and pushed the transport harder. The rumble of the engine grew louder, vibrating through the floor. The chase felt endless, the night a blur of motion and tension. When they reached the canyon, Daniel cut the lights and swerved sharply into the narrow opening. The rock walls rose high on either side, blocking the moonlight. He drove deeper until the path split into shadowed tunnels. Choosing one at random, he slowed and finally killed the engine. Silence fell, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. The three of them sat still, listening for the sound of engine start after several long moments. Only the wind echoed through the canyon. They were safe for now. Daniel leaned back in his seat, taking a breath. "All right," he said quietly. "Tell me what's on that drive." The blue-gray woman connected it to a small portable device and powered up the screen. Complex symbols filled the display, then resolved into clear schematics. Daniel recognized parts of the design: massive reactors, weapon arrays, targeting systems. "This is the weapon," the blue-gray woman said. "Your people call it Project Epsilon. We called it the Starbreaker. It uses energy harvested from dying stars to create a chain reaction. Once fired, it will tear through the atmosphere of a planet and burn it from the inside out." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a deep anger. The green-skinned woman added, "It doesn't stop at one planet. Once the chain starts, it can spread to nearby worlds. It is not a tool of war, it is extinction." Daniel's jaw tightened as he studied the design. "And this, it's almost complete?" The blue-gray woman nodded. "Weeks, maybe days, before it's ready to fire." Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had fought in many battles, but nothing like this. "Where is it being built?" he asked. The green-skinned woman's golden eyes met his. "On an asteroid in neutral space. Your leaders think they can hide it there. But they can't hide from what will come after they use it." Daniel's thoughts turned to Colonel Hayes and the general. Had they known what they were building? Or were they following orders from someone even higher? Either way, the truth was clear. If the Starbreaker was finished, it would end more than just the war. "Then we have to destroy it," Daniel said, "before anyone can use it." The green-skinned woman's expression softened, just slightly. "You speak as if you are one of us." Daniel looked at her for a moment. "Maybe I am. War has a way of making enemies where there should be allies." The blue-gray woman closed the device and slipped the drive into her pocket. "Then we'll need a ship. And we'll need to move fast." They left the canyon at dawn, the first light of day casting long shadows across the desert. The pursuit had vanished for now, but Daniel knew they would be hunted again. Their destination was a smuggler's port at the edge of human-controlled space. It was the kind of place where questions were dangerous and credits spoke louder than orders. By nightfall, they reached the port. The air was thick with the smell of oil and smoke, and the streets were crowded with beings from half a dozen worlds. Daniel kept his head down, guiding the women through the narrow alleys until they found a docked freighter with a worn hull and a pilot leaning against the ramp. The man's eyes narrowed when he saw the women, but Daniel spoke first. "We need passage, no questions," the pilot smirked. "Everything has a price." Daniel handed him a small pouch of credits. The pilot weighed it in his palm, then nodded. "You didn't see me, I didn't see you. Get aboard." They moved quickly, disappearing into the ship's dim interior. Once in space, the freighter slipped into the black without broadcasting its route. Daniel stood by the viewport, watching the stars slide past. The green-skinned woman joined him, her voice low. "When we reach the asteroid, it will not be unguarded. You should know what you're walking into." Daniel glanced at her. "I've been walking into danger my whole life. This is no different, except this time, it matters more." The blue-gray woman came to stand beside them, her tone firm. "If we succeed, the Starbreaker will never fire. If we fail, there will be no one left to remember us." The weight of her words settled over them all. Outside, the stars seemed endless, but Daniel knew the real battle waited ahead, hidden on a cold rock in the middle of nowhere. And when they found it, there would be no turning back. The freighter dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the shadow of the asteroid. It was a jagged, lifeless rock floating in the dark, but its surface bristled with structures, towers, weapon emplacements, and the long, sleek barrel of the Starbreaker. Even from here, Daniel could feel its presence like a threat in the air. The pilot glanced nervously at the view. "You didn't tell me you were going near that thing," he muttered. Daniel didn't answer. They were already committed. Blue-gray woman activated a small scanner, her voice calm despite the danger. "There's a maintenance bay on the far side. Lightly guarded. We can get in there without triggering the main alarms. The green-skinned woman studied the weapons. Outer hull. Once we're inside, we head for the core. Destroy it from within, and the Starbreaker will tear itself apart. Daniel checked his rifle and the extra charges on his belt. Then let's move. The freighter slipped around the asteroid, hugging the shadows until the maintenance bay came into view. Only 2 patrol craft floated nearby. The pilot eased closer, pretending to be on routine supply duty. When the bay doors opened, Daniel and the 2 women slipped out into the dim light, blending with the handful of workers moving crates. Inside, the air smelled of metal and ozone. The walls vibrated faintly with the energy coursing through the weapons systems. They moved quickly through narrow corridors, avoiding patrols, each step bringing them deeper into the machine's heart. The hum of the reactor grew louder, a constant reminder of the weapon's power. When they reached the core chamber, Daniel stopped short. It was enormous, an open space filled with glowing conduits, and a swirling sphere of compressed star energy suspended in a magnetic field. The light bathed the walls in a blinding gold. The green-skinned woman's voice was barely above a whisper. "One wrong move and this whole place will go up." The blue-gray woman pulled a small device from her belt. "This will overload the containment field. We'll have 5 minutes to escape before it collapses." Daniel covered the door while she worked, his rifle ready. The green-skinned woman kept watch on the upper walkways, her blade in hand. The seconds stretched, each one heavier than the last. Then the alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and a voice shouted over the intercom in a language Daniel didn't understand. The blue-gray woman slammed the final switch on the device. "It's done, move." Soldiers poured into the room, their weapons raised. Daniel fired first, the sharp crack of his rifle echoing through the chamber. The green-skinned woman leapt into the fray, her blade cutting down the first attacker. They fought their way back through the corridors, the wail of the alarms mixing with the pounding of their footsteps. The floor shuddered beneath them as the Starbreaker's core began to destabilize. Daniel grabbed the blue-gray woman's arm, pulling her forward as a blast of energy ripped through the wall behind them. At the maintenance bay, the pilot was already yelling into the comms, "Get in, now!" They dove into the freighter, the doors sealing shut just as the first explosion shook the asteroid. The pilot slammed the controls, and the freighter shot away, the view outside filling with blinding light as the Starbreaker tore itself apart in a storm of fire and debris. For a long time, no one spoke. The 3 of them stood near the viewport, watching the remains of the weapon drift into the dark. Finally, the blue-gray woman exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time. "It's over." The green-skinned woman glanced at Daniel. "You saved more than just us today." Daniel shook his head. "We did it together." He knew what it had cost them, betrayal of orders, risking their lives for a cause bigger than any one world. But as he looked at the 2 women beside him, he felt no regret. The pilot cleared his throat. "Where to now?" Daniel glanced at the women. The blue-gray one smiled faintly. "There are still wars to end, but for now, somewhere safe." The green-skinned woman's golden eyes held his for a moment. "And maybe, one day, a place where humans and our people stand side by side without chains." The freighter slipped back into faster-than-light travel, leaving the shattered remains of the Starbreaker behind. The galaxy was still dangerous, still divided, but in that small ship, 3 former enemies sat together not as captor and captives, but as allies bound by a choice that had changed the fate of worlds. Daniel leaned back in his seat, letting the hum of the engines fill the silence. He had walked into the desert as a soldier with orders, and now he was something else entirely. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he would never again stand by while others were bound in chains. And the 2 alien women, once offered to him as a prize of war, would never be anyone's reward again.